John thought he had it figured out. Last Tuesday, he opened the spreadsheet he has kept since 2009. The bottom right cell finally read $750,000. He is 52 years old. He has never earned more than $84,000 in a single year. He sat there for a full minute and felt something close to relief. Then he did the one thing almost nobody does at this milestone. He asked a second question, not how much do I have, but how much of it can I actually spend? The answer was $350,000. Same statement, same Tuesday, less than half the number. Nothing had crashed. Nothing was stolen. John had simply discovered the difference between net worth and money, and that difference is where most people at this exact level quietly lose everything. They spent 20 years building. Here is the part nobody warns you about. At $750,000, a bad decision no longer costs you a paycheck. It costs you years. A 20% drawdown is $150,000. That is more than John has ever earned in a single year of his life. And for the first time, he cannot outwork it. He cannot save his way back. The number is now bigger than he is. Let's be precise about where $750,000 actually puts you, because almost every video on this topic gets it wrong. You will hear that this number puts you in the top 10% of American households. It does not. According to Federal Reserve data, the top 10% of U.S. households by net worth begins at roughly $1,920,000. 3/4 of American households sit below about $659,000. The median household net worth in this country is $192,700. So $750,000 puts you somewhere around the 78th percentile, comfortably above average. Nowhere near wealthy, and that distinction matters far more than it sounds, because people who believe they are already rich behave very differently from people who know they are merely close. Here is the trap. Almost everything written about this milestone treats $750,000 as one number. One pile, one balance on one screen. It is not one pile. It is at least 4 piles, and they do not behave the same way at all. One of them you cannot spend without becoming homeless. One of them the government owns a share of and simply has not collected yet. One of them charges you a 10% penalty for touching it before you turn 59 and a half. And one of them, usually the smallest one, is the only money that is genuinely yours today. Most people at this level manage the headline number. Almost nobody manages the 4 piles. That is the entire game from here forward. And it is the reason 2 people with identical net worth end up in completely different lives. Before you dismiss it, hear this. 4 people, 4 spreadsheets. Every one of them reads about $750,000. Start with John, 52 years old, operations manager, $84,000 a year. His number breaks down like this. $310,000 in home equity. $340,000 in a traditional 401k, $55,000 in a taxable brokerage account, $30,000 in cash, $15,000 in 2 paid-off cars. Now meet Carla. She is 32, software support, $94,000 a year, and she has been putting $1,200 a month into a total market index fund since she was 21 years old. She rents an apartment. Her $740,000 looks nothing like John's. $410,000 sits in a taxable brokerage account. $260,000 is in Roth accounts. $40,000 is in high-yield savings. $30,000 remains in an old traditional IRA she has been converting a slice at a time. Then there is Diana, 34 years old, marketing, $78,000 a year. By every conventional measure, Diana did everything right. She bought a house at 29. She maxed her 401k every single year. Her $760,000 is $520,000 of home equity and $215,000 in a pre-tax 401k. $25,000 sits in checking. That is the entire balance sheet. And finally, Maya, 28. She sold a small business 2 years ago and has been sitting on the proceeds ever since, quietly terrified of losing any of it. $720,000 in a high-yield savings account paying 4%. $0 in the market, not one share, 4 people. Roughly the same headline number. Now ask each of them one simple question. How much money could you actually access this month without paying a penalty, selling your home, or handing a third of it to the IRS? Carla can reach about $450,000. Maya can reach $720,000. John can reach $85,000. Diana can reach $25,000. Diana has the highest net worth of the 4. Diana has the least money. Read that sentence twice because it is the most expensive misunderstanding in American personal finance. And Diana is not irresponsible. Diana is exactly the person your parents told you to become. She bought the house. She maxed the retirement account. She avoided consumer debt entirely. And she has built a fortune she is not legally allowed to touch for another 25 years. There is a name for this. The financial independence community calls it the middle-class trap. You follow every rule correctly, you wake up with a beautiful balance sheet on paper, and every dollar of it is locked inside a house you still need to sleep in or a retirement account with a wall around it. Home equity is real wealth. It is not spendable wealth. You are not going to sell the house because you need somewhere to live. You are probably not going to refinance to pull equity out either, because the mortgage you already have is almost certainly cheaper than the one you would get today. Federal Reserve data is blunt about this. For the middle 3/5 of American households, the primary residence is the single largest asset on the entire balance sheet. Not stocks, not the retirement account, the house. And the house pays you nothing. It does not send a dividend. It does not fund a grocery run or a medical bill. It appreciates silently on a screen while you keep writing. Checks for property tax, insurance, and a roof that needs replacing. Now watch what happens to these four, because this is where they separate permanently. Carla adds nothing more and earns 7%. Her $740,000 becomes roughly $2.86 million. More importantly, most of that is already taxed or already tax-free. What she sees on the screen is close to what she actually gets. Maya leaves everything in cash at 4% while inflation runs at 3%. Her $720,000 becomes about $1.58 million on paper. In real purchasing power, she has gained roughly 1% per year. For 20 years, she will feel completely safe the entire time. She will also give up around $1.2 million to a decision that felt like caution. Diana's number grows as well. It grows inside a pre-tax account and inside a house. 20 years from now, she will have a larger paper fortune, a much larger tax bill waiting for her, and the same $25,000 of actual flexibility she has today. And John is standing at that fork right now this Tuesday with a spreadsheet open. Here's what nobody tells you about home equity at this level. Every net worth calculator on the internet adds your home equity to your total. Every single one. And that is technically correct and practically misleading, because it puts an unspendable asset in the same column as a brokerage account. John has $310,000 of equity in his house. That equity has exactly 3 exits. He can sell the house, which means buying or renting another one at today's prices. He can borrow against it, which means paying interest to access money he supposedly already owns. Or he can die, at which point it becomes someone else's problem. None of those 3 is a retirement plan. That is why serious planners do not include a primary residence in a financial independence number. Your house is where your money lives, not where it works. Now, does paying the house off help? Yes, but not in the way most people assume. Paying it off does not create money. It converts a monthly payment into a monthly non-payment. If John's mortgage is $1,500 a month, paying it off frees $1,500 a month. That is real and it is valuable, but it also drains liquid capital into the least liquid asset he owns. Here is the honest framing. Your mortgage rate is your hurdle rate. If you carry a 3% mortgage and your portfolio has returned 7%, paying that mortgage off early is a guaranteed 3% return against an expected 7% one. If you carry a 7% mortgage, the math flips completely and paying it down is one of the best risk-free returns available to you. Most people never run that comparison. They pay off the house because it feels like winning. Sometimes feeling like winning and actually winning are the same thing. Around $750,000, they usually are not. Here's what actually happens inside a traditional 401k, and it is nothing like what your statement says. John's statement reads $340,000. That number is not his. A portion of it belongs to the IRS, and the IRS has simply agreed to wait. Every dollar that went into that account went in before taxes. Every dollar that comes out will be taxed as ordinary income, not capital gains. Ordinary income, at whatever bracket he lands in during the year he withdraws it. If John retires and pulls money at an effective rate of 22%, then $74,800 of his $340,000 was never his to begin with. It is a tax liability sitting inside an asset column wearing a costume. Add a state income tax and that share grows. Some retirees discover something worse. When required minimum distributions begin at age 73, a large pre-tax balance can force taxable income high enough to make Social Security benefits taxable and trigger Medicare premium surcharges. That combination can push the effective cost of the next dollar withdrawn to somewhere near 40 cents. So John's real balance sheet is not 310 plus 340 plus 55 plus 30 plus 15. Strip out the house he cannot spend, the cars that are depreciating, and the tax the government has already earned, and the number that will genuinely fund his retirement is closer to $350,000. $750 on the statement, about $350 in reality. That is not pessimism, that is arithmetic. And it is the single most useful calculation anyone at this level can run, because every decision from here should be sized against the real number, not the flattering one. Here's what most people learn far too late about the age 59 and a half. That number is a wall. Before it, most withdrawals from a traditional 401k or IRA get hit with ordinary income tax plus a 10% early distribution penalty. Add federal, state, and penalty together, and you can be looking at a 37% haircut. Run that through. If John needs $50,000 from his 401k at age 52, he does not withdraw $50,000. He withdraws about $79,365 to net $50,000. He pays $29,000 for the privilege of accessing his own savings early. This is why Diana's position is so much more fragile than her net worth suggests. She is 34. She has $215,000 in a pre-tax account and 25 years before that wall comes down. There are legitimate doors through it. A Roth conversion ladder lets you move money from a traditional account into a Roth. Pay the tax now at a low bracket and access those converted amounts penalty-free after a 5-year seasoning period. Rule 72T allows substantially equal periodic payments before 59 and a half without the penalty, provided you commit to a fixed schedule and do not deviate. Both of those require planning years in advance. Neither works as an emergency button. The practical takeaway at $750,000 is this. Look at the ratio between your accessible money and your locked money. If 90% of your wealth sits behind a wall, you do not have a wealth problem. You have a structure problem, and structure problems are fixed with contributions, not with panic. Here's the math that changes what your job even means. At $750,000, assume a 7% long-run return. That portfolio generates $52,500 per year, $4,375 per month, about $144 every single day, including weekends, including the days you are asleep. The median American household earns roughly $80,000 before taxes. John's money now produces about 65% of a full median household income, and it does not commute, call in sick, or ask for a raise. Now compare that to what he can save. John puts away $1,500 a month, $18,000 a year. That is a genuinely strong savings rate on $84,000 of income. $52,500 versus $18,000. His portfolio out-earns his savings by nearly 3 to 1. This is the crossover, and it is the real reason this milestone matters. Up to about $100,000, your savings rate is the engine, and returns are a rounding error. Somewhere between $400,000 and $750,000, that reverses permanently. Returns become the engine, and your savings become the rounding error, which means your leverage moves. Before the crossover, the highest value thing you can do is earn more and save more. After the crossover, the highest value thing you can do is protect the rate of return and avoid catastrophic mistakes. At 7%, money doubles every 10.3 years. John's $750,000 becomes about $1.48 million by 62 and about $2.9 million by 72, if he simply does not interrupt it. The word doing most of the work in that sentence is interrupt. Here's what a 1% fee actually costs. And it is not 1%. John's advisor charges 1% of assets under management. On $750,000, that is $7,500 per year. It sounds almost trivial. It is deducted quietly. There is no invoice in the mail. Now compound it. $750,000 growing at 7% for 25 years becomes $4,070,574. The same $750,000 growing at 6%, because 1 point of return went to fees, becomes $3,218,903. The difference is $851,671. 1%, 25 years, $851,000, more than the entire portfolio John started with. And there is a cleaner way to feel it. At 7%, your money doubles every 10.3 years. At 6%, it doubles every 12 years. That single percentage point costs you about 1 year and 8 months of compounding on every doubling. Over a long horizon, a 1% fee does not cost you money. It costs you time. None of this means advisors are worthless. A good advisor who stops you from selling everything in a crash can easily earn back their fee in a single decade. A tax planner who structures your Roth conversion window correctly can save you 6 figures. But you are entitled to a specific answer to a specific question. Ask your advisor this. What is my total all-in cost this year in dollars, including your fee, the fund expense ratios, and any platform charges? Not a percentage. Dollars. If they cannot answer that in one sentence, you have learned something important. Here's what actually destroys retirements, and it is not the average return. Two people retire on the same day. Both have $750,000. Both withdraw $45,000 a year. Both experience the exact same 20 annual returns, averaging 6.65%. The only difference between them is the order those returns arrive. The first person gets the bad years early. Down 20%, then down 12% right at the start, while she is also pulling money out. 20 years later, she has $265,136 left. The second person gets the identical returns in reverse. Good years first, bad years late. 20 years later, he has $877,003. A gap of $611,867. Same money, same withdrawals, same average return, same 2 decades, only the order changed. This is sequence of returns risk, and it is genuinely the most under-discussed danger in retirement planning. While you are accumulating, order does not matter much. The moment you start withdrawing, order becomes almost everything. Because selling shares in a down market permanently removes the shares. That would have recovered. The defense is unglamorous and it works. Hold 1 to 3 years of living expenses in cash or short-term bonds as you approach the withdrawal phase. When markets fall, you spend from the cash bucket instead of selling stocks at the bottom. You are not timing the market. You are buying yourself permission not to sell. At $750,000 with a decade or so to go, this is the single most important structural change most people never make. Here's what happens the moment your balance becomes visible. $750,000 has a smell, and there is an entire industry with a very good nose. Ask any advisor when the sales pressure arrives. It is not at $50,000. It is not at $200,000. It starts somewhere around $500,000 and intensifies sharply past $750,000 because that is the balance where commissions become worth the phone call. The pitch is always dressed as safety. You have worked hard for this. You cannot afford to lose it. Let's move some of it somewhere guaranteed. And then comes a product with a surrender period, a rider fee, and an illustration built on assumptions that quietly never happen. Here's a rule that will save some of you a great deal of money. Guaranteed and 18% cannot occupy the same sentence. If the return is genuinely guaranteed, it is small. If the return is large, someone is carrying risk, and if it is not the seller, it is you. The same reflex shows up in gentler forms. A friend suggests a rental property because real estate always goes up. A cousin has a business that just needs a little capital. A bank offers a home equity line at what sounds like a reasonable rate. And now your unspendable equity has become spendable and expensive at the same time. None of these are automatically wrong. Rental property builds real wealth for real people. But notice the pattern. Every one of them arrives after you cross this number, and every one of them asks you to take concentrated risk with capital that took 20 years to accumulate. The asymmetry matters. To go from $750,000 back to zero requires one catastrophic decision. To go from zero back to $750,000 requires 20 years. Those two paths are not the same length. Here's what actually erases the milestone, and it never feels like a mistake. Nobody loses $750,000 in a single afternoon. They lose it $2,000 a month at a time, and every one of those months feels completely reasonable. The nicer car, because the old one had 90,000 miles. The kitchen, because it was original. The better vacation, because the kids are only this age once. The second property, because everyone says it is a good investment. Call it $2,000 a month of permanent lifestyle upgrade. $24,000 a year. If that same $24,000 were invested at 7% for 20 years, it becomes $983,892. Nearly $1 million. That is what the upgrade reflex costs. And there is no single moment where you could point at a receipt and say that one was the mistake. The data backs this up uncomfortably well. About 54% of Americans report living paycheck to paycheck, and that includes 36% of households earning over $100,000 a year. A 2025 Goldman Sachs report found that 40% of households earning $500,000 or more still describe themselves the same way. Lifestyle inflation does not stop at any income. It scales with you. That is precisely why hitting a milestone is dangerous. The number makes you feel finished, and feeling finished is what turns saving into spending. The fix is boring and enormously effective. Freeze your spending for 36 months after you cross this line. Not forever. 3 years. Let the number grow past you while your life stays exactly the same size. Every raise, every bonus, every windfall goes to investments by default. You will not feel deprived. You will feel like nothing happened. That is the point. Here's the last one, and it is the one that costs the most. You are now the biggest risk to your own portfolio. Dalbar has studied investor behavior for over 30 years. Their finding is consistent and depressing. In 2024, the S&P 500 returned 25.02%. The average equity fund investor earned 16.54%. A gap of 848 basis points in a single year, caused almost entirely by late re-entries, poorly timed rebalancing, and tactical moves that missed the rally. Over the last decade, the average equity fund investor earned roughly 9.8% per year, while the S&P 500 returned about 13%. The market was not the problem, the investors were. And here is why that matters more at $750,000 than it ever did before. When you had $50,000 invested, a panic sell cost you a few $1,000s in missed recovery. At $750,000, the same panic during a 30% drawdown means locking in a $225,000 loss. $225,000 is more than 2.5 years of John's gross salary. Gone in one afternoon over one decision made in one bad mood. This is the moment to build friction into your own system. Automate the contributions so you never make an active buy decision. Set a rebalancing rule on the calendar, not on the news. Decide in advance in writing what you will do if the market falls 30%, and the answer should be nothing. At this level, the most profitable skill you can develop is the ability to do nothing on purpose. So here's the counterintuitive part, and it reframes everything above. Almost every video about this milestone tells you to protect what you have, get defensive, reduce risk, move to safety, and that advice, delivered without context, has probably cost more retirements than any market crash. Because the real problem at $750,000 is not that people are too aggressive. It is that they are measuring the wrong number, and then making perfectly rational decisions about a figure that does not exist. Go back to John, $750,000 on the statement. About $350,000 that will actually fund his life. If he believes the first number, he retires too early, withdraws too much, and runs out at 78. If he believes the second number, he keeps working strategically for 4 more years, converts a slice of that 401k every year in his lowest income brackets, builds a cash bucket, and retires with a structure instead of a total. Same man, same money. 2 completely different endings, decided entirely by which number he trusted. And notice what Diana's situation reveals. She has the highest net worth of the 4 and the least freedom. Maya has the most accessible money and the worst long-run outcome. Carla has neither the highest number nor the most cash, and she is going to win comfortably, because her $740,000 is the only one of the 4 that is simultaneously liquid, growing, and already taxed. Liquidity, growth, and tax treatment. Almost nobody optimizes all 3. Most people optimize the headline and hope. Net worth is what you own. Liquidity is what you can use. Only one of them shows up when you actually need it. That is the whole lesson. Not spend less, not get defensive. Just stop letting one number stand in for 4 very different kinds of money, because the market will not punish you for that mistake. Your own plan will. The most useful thing you can do this week costs nothing and takes about 20 minutes. Open a blank page, write down 4 columns. Column 1, money you can spend this month with no penalty and no tax surprise. Column 2, money in tax-advantaged accounts minus a realistic estimate of the tax you will eventually owe. Column 3, home equity, and put an asterisk on it because it is real wealth you cannot eat. Column 4, everything depreciating. Add up column 1 and column 2. That is your actual retirement number. It will almost certainly be smaller than the figure you have been quoting to yourself. And that is good, because it is the first honest number you have had in years. Then run the ratio. If more than 80% of your wealth sits in columns 3 and 4, you do not have an investing problem. You have a structure problem, and structure gets fixed with the next 24 months of contributions, not with a dramatic move. If this showed you something you did not know was happening with your money, subscribe to Wealth POV and hit the notification bell. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every day. And the next time someone congratulates you on a net worth milestone, ask yourself the only question that has ever mattered at this level. Not what is it worth, but how much of it am I actually allowed to use? Do the math. Make the decision that matches your reality, not someone else's sales pitch. Stop asking what your net worth is. Start asking how much of it you can actually spend.